What's up, y'all? Gannon here. Welcome back to another one of my Star Trek reviews. Thank you so much for being here. In last week's episode of Lower Decks, we got a 2-for-1 special for the season premiere. The first episode being a huge treat because we got the Lower Deckers going aboard the U.S.S Voyager while they were on this mission, taking it back to Earth to turn it into a museum and essentially put it on mothballs, which, as depressing as that is, they took the time to explore all of the outrageous and super silly facets of Voyager that have historically not been celebrated but have been criticized. And we got to see Michael McKean's Thaw Clown. Even though he didn't voice it, we still got to see the clown, which is a huge dub for me because I love the Thaw so much. One of my favorite episodes of Trek of all time. Second episode had us exploring a space menagerie as they went to go and rescue some humans. Obviously a huge ode to the original pilot episode of Star Trek, where Captain Pike actually got put in a menagerie himself by the Telosians. Episode 3 is called In the Cradle of Vexilon, and it is called this because the name of the supercomputer that is on this megastructure that they spend the majority of the episode on is named Vexilon, and this computer is truly the highlight of the episode. The voice actor was really appealing. Everything that the computer said was just pretty funny. It was a nice computer, very inviting. Reminded me of two aspects of the TOS. For one thing, it just reminded me of a nicer version of Landru from the Return of the Archons episode. Love that episode, by the way. The fact that it was designed by higher life forms is very reminiscent of the Anti-Meteor Shrine from the Paradise Syndrome episode as well. Vexilon is home to this really dope ringed megastructure. If you've consumed science fiction art, especially retro, you would know that ringed megastructures were a very popular archetype that illustrators liked to draw back in the day. Larry Niven was the first person to actually popularize this concept in science fiction when he released his very popular novel called Ringworld in 1970. The megastructure, by the way, is called Corazonia, and I assume that's because it's got a really dope artificial sun in the middle. Our poor pal Vexilon over here is on Windows Vista, and he desperately needs something better. Captain Freeman has come with the crew of the U.S.S Cerritos to upgrade him to Windows 10. Another thing my viewers could probably help me out here on is I'm pretty sure the plants on this planet, this ringed megastructure, were pretty unique. And you guys have to tell me, because I was drunk the entire time that I watched the animated series. Do those plants show up in the animated series, or do they show up somewhere in Star Trek, or is this the first time we're seeing them? I thought that might have been a reference to something, but somebody else will have to enlighten me. Besides Captain Freeman trying to fix Vexilon, the computer, the other two major plot points in this episode are the fact that Rutherford, Tendi, and Mariner are on board the ship, and they are suspicious that this lieutenant by the name of Lieutenant Dirk is hazing them by having them look through isolinear chips meticulously and very tediously all day. Just have to say that this is the biggest T'Lyn episode yet. I've not seen an episode yet where she has gotten more dialogue, where she's made me laugh more than this, and then also she just complimented Brad Boimler's whole entire story plot very well, how she was helping him command these ensigns and coming to the realization that he can't do everything himself. If I remember, 7 of 9 was the individual to help Harry Kim realize that in that one Voyager episode. So definitely, I think that that is just a straight parallel there. Prior to Lieutenant Dirk having Tendi, Rutherford, and Mariner look through all those isolinear chips, they were in this room aboard the ship known as the Anomaly Room. And I have to say that this episode did a really good job of not overly relying on references, and the references that they did choose to include in the episode were not Easter eggs, ones that you had to look really hard to see. Inside the Anomaly Room, we had very common weapons that you see all the time, batleths and lirpas, and then we also saw the Catanian probe from Inner Light. Even though that was shown as an Easter egg initially, they do a good job of bringing it back later in the episode. My favorite aspect of today's episode, the thing that made me really laugh out loud and cherish it, was the use of the Betazoid Gift box. At the end of the Anomaly Room section, they find the Betazoid Gift box, and this thing is just like one of those vulgar parrots. You know how parakeets and parrots mimic human speech and actually say a couple phrases, and sometimes they have owners that are very vulgar and they end up cussing and swearing? Exact vibe that I got from this Betazoid Gift box. Betazoid Gift box, of course, being from Lwaxana Troy's first ever appearance in the TNG, the Haven episode, if I remember correctly. Rutherford was carrying this thing around, and because Lieutenant Commander Dirk was trying to act like he wasn't hazing them, he came up with this funny story that he entered the Wadi Chulo game, you know, the game board that transported the entire senior staff of Deep Space Nine into it in the one episode Move Along Home. One of the most highly criticized episodes of all time in Star Trek, and I swear every time I rewatch Deep Space Nine, I love watching it so much. I did get the sense that they were trying to once again celebrate one of the most highly criticized moments in Star Trek, and that was really funny. Gift box falls victim to the Catanian probe, you know, that probe that beamed a whole bunch of information into Picard in the famous episode, The Inner Light, really iconic episode with the Picard flute, where he lived an entire lifetime in the span of a couple moments. A new key character shows up as well, because this is the first time that we're ever seeing Lieutenant Billup's ferret named Lancelot. While Mariner is trying to distract Lieutenant Dirk from going back to his room and seeing the Wadi Chulo game and possibly getting traumatized, Commander Dirk makes a reference to Ketracel White, and he makes a comment about how he knew somebody who OD'd on it. So I think that might be like the 5th or 6th time that they've referenced Ketracel White. It is a pretty important part of Trek, but I feel like we need some more original Trek to reference in Lower Decks. I feel like they're running out of ideas sometimes. With all that being said, this episode was really entertaining. It was funny, and then they also did a good job of exploring previous Trek, like Lower Decks usually does, but they did introduce some real cool science fiction with that megastructure. I loved seeing the ringed megastructure, and the fact that they took the opportunity to introduce a ringed megastructure into Federation space in the canon is great. It is tantamount to the Dyson Sphere from the Scotty episode, so really liked that. I think this episode gets itself a 7 out of 10 because it was above average in the funniness level, and I enjoyed it a little bit more than the episode 2 when they were going to the menagerie with the Moopsie. I think I liked this episode just a little bit more. With all that being said, until next week when we review another episode of Star Trek Lower Decks, if you're enjoying any of the content you see on the channel, I'd be very flattered if you were to hit the subscribe button. And if you want to share anything with me, please leave it down in the comments below. They are my favorite thing about YouTube. The more comments you leave, the happier I am. And with all that being said, thanks so much for tuning in. Hope you all have a good rest of your week. Live long and prosper.